Howdy, howdy, howdy. My name's Anacha Sasuke, and welcome back to Let's Read the SCP Foundation Wiki. Now, in the last, first things first, in the last episode we read, I believe, the improvement test, the memory replacing disk, computing microbes, Stendhal's nightmare, and the forest formerly known as Vince. In this episode, we're going to be reading The Only Child, Devil's Cap Mushroom, Sight Stealing Eye, Dr. Wondertainment's Bubble Bath Bonbons, and the Creche? So, initially, it wasn't really my intention to do an SCP episode today, but this is my first time recording at my friend's apartment, and we're in the middle of a global pandemic, so everybody's not at work like I was expecting them to be, because otherwise I would have been doing Homestuck right now, but I don't really want to be doing car cat voice surrounded by apartment neighbors. Because even though they say that when we're loudly laughing at silly YouTube videos they can't even hear it, I'm pretty sure they'd hear me yelling obscenities being car cat. But this should be fine. So, let's start out with that there Devil's Cap Mushroom. Okay, so it's Euclid. A single specimen of 1077 is kept in a secure 3x3x3.5 meter containment area biosite 95. The containment area is filled with soil up to 1 meter in depth and a variety of plant species native to 1077's natural habitat, as well as dead plant matter. I thought the sentence was about to end, so I read it weird. As well as dead plant matter have been introduced into it to provide it with material for decomposition. There's the end of the sentence. The containment area is to be contained as per standard protocols for a biosafety level 4 containment area. Staff working at Biosite 95 must be regularly tested for 1077 infection. Infectees are to be quarantined, stripped of security clearance, and treated for systemic mycosis. Can we figure out what that is? Is that actually a thing? What's systemic mycosis? Systemic mycosis are fungal infections affecting organs. In the right circumstances, the fungi enter the body via the lungs, through the gut, paranasal sinuses, or skin. So I guess that's what the zombie virus in The Last of Us is one of those. Infectees must be assessed by a medical doctor briefed on 1077 before they may be released. Instances of scrolled a little bit too far, my mouse is freaking out a little bit. Instances of 1077 found in the wild are to be destroyed immediately using fungicidal compound 82A, and the surrounding area must be monitored for 2 months in order to ascertain possible 1077 resurgence. You could just torch it, but alright. And unless fungus is immune to fire, it is called devils, so maybe this particular one is immune to fire. MTF Epsilon 7, the glass jar, is charged with eradication of the wild population. Current target for eradication of wild 1077 population is set at blankety blank blank, which is a date. Should 1077 infectees appear outside Foundation custody, they are to be immediately taken into custody or terminated. 1077 infectees not affiliated with the Foundation. I mean, I guess you could be afflicted with the Foundation too, but that are currently in Foundation custody are to be treated for systemic mycosis and released following administration of an appropriate amnestic. 1077 infectees are to be considered level 4 biohazards and must be treated or transported in accordance to biohazard protocol. Testimony of 1077 infectees is to be considered suspect. The bodies of all casualties exposed to 1077 must be incinerated immediately. Read that out of order just a little bit. Description: SCP-1077 is a species of fungus bearing a distinct resemblance to some members of the genus Agaricus of the family Agaricae. It is native to the temperate woodland of Redacted and has a relatively limited range within this area. Now let's find out what that is. Agaricus is a genus of mushroom containing both edible and poisonous species with possibly over 300 members worldwide. The genus includes the common mushroom and the field mushroom, the dominant cultivated mushrooms in the West. Okay. The fungus grows in soil and produces a fruiting body with a fleshy gilled cap and stalk, white in coloration. Unlike most members of this genus, 1077 produces extremely small, translucent spores, which are largely invisible to the human eye. Okay. 1077 does not present overtly anomalous properties unless its spores are inhaled. While the anomalous effects are present in animals, they are most notable in humans. When its spores are inhaled in sufficient quantities, 1077 has a roughly 70% chance of inducing systemic mycosis of the respiratory tract. Although this is greater amongst those with compromised immune systems. The spores settle in the throat, windpipe, and lungs and begin to grow. 1077 infection has no apparent symptoms for several days after the infection. After this, it begins to cause minor irritation to the throat and chest area, as well as causing bouts of coughing in the infectees. However, symptoms rarely progress far beyond this state, and many infectees mistake the symptoms for a common minor illness. How do you mistake having mushrooms inside of your head as a cold? Anyway. However, approximately 12 to 18 days after initial infection, the primary anomalous effects of 1077 infection become apparent. Okay, so this is it. Through a currently unknown mechanism, the fungus will alter the vocal patterns of the infected. This causes humans infected by the fungus to, when speaking, make comments other than those the speaker had intended. That's weird. This begins as slight mistakes or misplacements of single words, but rapidly develops into a state where the fungus appears to be able to manipulate the host's voice completely. The condition appears to have some effect on perception as well. Roll a perception check. Subjects often fail to notice the subject's changes in their speech unless it is brought to their attention, and in some cases will fail to notice they have spoken at all. So again, roll for perception. Changes in vocal patterns are diverse, initially completely incomprehensible to outside observers, but rapidly becoming more coherent as the condition progresses. Through the host, 1077 may manipulate others through changes in the host, or in certain cases speak directly to observers. In most cases, changes in speech manifest as the infectee making remarks seemingly intended to lead to its own death. Infectees may launch into impassioned insults and personal attacks in order to provoke others into attacking itself. They may threaten violence against others, and may mislead others into directly or indirectly bringing about their death. 1077 can utilize any pertinent information available to the host in order to further this effect. However, certain instances of 1077 display other, more varied vocal alterations not necessarily engineered to result in the host's body's death, either manipulating people around the host through alterations in the language, or in order to directly address others. The entity responsible for these alterations appears to be intelligent and capable of extensive forward planning and deception in order to achieve its goal, which appears to be the propagation of 1077, because of course it is. I mean, it makes sense if the mushroom sends its spores into people's respiratory passages, takes over their ability to speak, and then convinces people to kill it. That probably makes the spores spread more, like when you flick a dandelion and it gets all in your eyes and whatnot. Don't flick dandelions, it sucks. Each infection of 1077 appears to have a unique identity and refers to the SCP-1077 species in general as their people, and other distinct 1077 instances as their siblings. Instances appear to vary wildly in personality and individual intelligence. Instances of 1077 appear to be able to communicate with each other in some manner and transfer information. The infection does not necessarily lead immediately to the development of anomalous effects, and as a result, 1077 infection may not be outwardly identifiable as such for extended periods of time, since the entity will sometimes go to extreme lengths to conceal itself. After an unknown amount of time, it can begin to affect other forms of communication by the subject, including sign language, writing, or typing. It should be noted that 1077 cannot affect the host in any way other than altering methods of communication. Other activities undertaken by the host are unaffected. Addendum 1. When 1077 was initially contained, its capability for altering written documents and its apparent sapience were not discovered, and its virulence was severely underestimated. Flawed containment procedures written at the time resulted in a prolonged containment breach lasting for at least 21 days, during which a significant amount of Biosite 95 staff were infected, with the breach only being discovered upon an external examination, prompted by reports of record numbers of work-related deaths and incidents of professional misconduct at the site. Following Incident A, containment procedures were reevaluated and extensive testing conducted to determine the true properties. All infected staff were treated for systemic mycosis and have since made a full return to active duty. Upgrade to Keter class requested, but ultimately denied following an implementation of current procedures. And now we're going to check out an interview log, which is probably going to have cursing in it because they insult people. Interviewed Miss Amanda Church, a civilian affected by the infection. Interviewed by researcher blank. On blankety blank blank, Mrs. Church called a local radio show and demonstrated highly sensitive knowledge related to the Foundation. Mrs. Church was apprehended by Foundation agents shortly thereafter, and infection was verified. Standard disinformation tactics were employed to dismiss her claims as those of an eccentric conspiracy theorist. This occurrence has been classified as Incident B. So what was Incident A was the thing it said. This interview was conducted via an electronic speaker system so that researcher blank could not be exposed. Mrs. Church is restrained. It is not fully known to what extent it altered her voice during this conversation, or what Mrs. Church intended to say during sections in which her voice was altered. Hello, Mrs. Church. Why have you brought me to Biosite 95? That is not your current location. You've been brought here in order to assess the danger posed by a fungal entity which has infected you. What do you mean? You're infected by an unusual strain of fungus capable of altering your voice. Please do not panic. You will be allowed to leave should you cooperate. From now on, I will address the entity infecting this body. This is understood, researcher blank blank. From now on, you may assume that all remarks made by Ms. Church are on behalf of one of the people you classify SCP-1077. How did you gain access to the information which you had Ms. Church transmit? How do you know my name? Everything is shared among us in a way. A sibling of mine was aware of the information and has passed it on to me. You seem unusually willing to explain this to me. Why? No obfuscation is necessary, as I am here to deliver a message. The information I coerced Mrs. Church into transmitting was both a ploy to attract attention and also a demonstration of power. What is your message? Release my sibling at once, or else the next body we find will reveal far more damaging information about your organization. You want us to remove containment on the specimen of 1077 currently in containment? In essence, yes. Cease this persecution of the people and of our sibling, or we will use the information our siblings have previously acquired from your operatives. That is all. We will consider it. We live to spread. Let us spread or suffer the consequences. Mrs. Church was treated as per standard procedure and her body incinerated following this interview. I thought y'all said you were... Okay, whatever. You can... The whole first half of this article is the fact that you can heal people. Or is it because she just knows and is no longer... Okay, but amnestics! Fine, whatever. Since Incident B, blank instances of 1077 infection have occurred, of which blank led to an attempted breach of secrecy. No information has been released which was not consistent with the information known to personnel involved in Incident A. So far, standard disinformation tactics have proven effective at combating breaches of secrecy caused by 1077. Relative remoteness of the fungi's inhabited range and low rate of human contact have largely prevented 1077 from becoming a major threat to Foundation's security. Further interviews with other instances have indicated that 1077 does not present a united front in opposition of the Foundation, and many instances are not interested in further hostile action, considering such actions will be unnecessary and antagonistic. Due to the largely hostile intent, currently uncontained nature, and persistent ability to cause information leaks, the stated mission of Mobile Task Force Upsilon 7 has been modified to include attempted eradication of 1077 from its environment. Which presumably would be fire, which is what you should have been doing in the first place. Y'all don't need to contain everything. If you can kill it, do that. Anyway. So, sight-stealing eye, which is the exact opposite of what I should be doing. See, look, it used to be safe and now it isn't anymore. They understand. SCP-1078 is to be stored in a cubicle box composed entirely, I thought that said hope, but like the Foundation has hope. Entirely of HDPE plastic at a thickness of no less than 5 centimeters. I don't have a tape measure with me, but I'm pretty sure that's like an inch and some change, because my country doesn't use metrics like everybody else in the world. This box is to be suspended at all times in a Faraday cage with mesh no larger than 0.05 millimeters and with dimensions of no larger than 1 by 1 by 1 meter. Really not sure why they don't just say cubed whenever it's boxed like that. Anyway, a separate room contained entirely within a Faraday cage of similar mesh size will be set aside for all testing attempts involving 1078. The cage containing the object's box may not be opened unless it is contained in this room and the door is closed. Experimentation on 1078 requires written consent of at least one level 4 researcher. Consent? All disposable dudes involved in experiments involving 1078 will be exempted from the monthly termination, although it is recommended that no subject be allowed to host 1078 for longer than 1 year, owing to increased possibility of suicide and potential loss of the SCP itself. During the experiment, the subject must be monitored at all times for suicidal tendencies. For signs of suicidal tendencies. I may have said that right the first time, but it doesn't feel like I did. Nothing that could be used for suicide attempts is to be allowed inside the containment cell. Upon termination of the subject, or in the event of suicide, the room must be immediately entered and 1078 directly observed. A member of medical staff must be present at all times and equipped to remove SCP-1078 from the host. They must be called immediately upon confirmation of the death of an experimental subject. Okay. 1078 is a small spherical glass eye, of a form consistent with the late 19th century German glass-blowing techniques. It never really occurred to me where glass eyes come from, and now I'm just imagining a bubble of glass coming out like they're about to start glass blowing. Like, nope, that's fine, that's good, you can stop now. And then splashing water on it, and then painting an iris on it, and then just into somebody's head. But, shavings have confirmed the material to be of high-quality blown glass, although no sample has been retrieved from a depth of greater than blank millimeters. When not fully retracted, bristles composed mainly of copper extrude from a 0.25 centimeter squared area directly opposite the object's pupil. The iris of the object is capable of alteration in color. When worn by a subject, it alters to match the color of the eye that was originally in that socket. This change is exact even if the user exhibits heterochromia and the previous eye was completely removed. See Experiment 2. In addition, when worn, the iris has been seen to contract or expand in response to outside lighting conditions, and moves along with the normal eye even if the subject's eye muscles are no longer functional. When inserted into the eye socket of a person missing one or both eyes, the bristles will extend and incorporate themselves into the optic nerve. Autopsies of test subjects have confirmed that this is accomplished by barbs of pure silver that extrude from the bristles. Subjects describe this process, which takes approximately 2 hours, as an itching sensation, but none have reported pain during the process except for the subject of 8, which is expected due to the experiment resulting in data expunged. After a period of time ranging from 12 hours to a few days, integration with neural processes is complete, and subject reports a steadily growing ability to see through the eye. Full visual acuity is confirmed within a month in all cases, and eye tests have confirmed that over the following weeks the subject's eyesight steadily becomes more and more sharp. While more subjective, other tests indicate that the subject's auditory and tactile senses also sharpen during this period, which is the opposite of what the ability to see does. After a period lasting between 3 to 7 months, the subject's sensory abilities will peak. Starting from this point, 1078 will begin to selectively erase auditory and visual input from human subjects. This process will initially manifest as a blurring of the image of select humans and sound that subjects have described as like a radio that's stuck between 2 channels when a selected human is speaking. Over time, targets will be erased completely from the subject's vision and hearing. This includes all video, photographic, and audio recordings. Tactile sensations have been confirmed to be unaffected by this process for unknown reasons. In addition, targets' effects on the surrounding area will still be visible or audible. Doors will still be seen to open, and any non-vocal sounds such as clapping will be audible. This allows communication with late-stage subjects through the use of writing. The process of erasure begins with a small number of people, no more than 5 at initial onset. Complete erasure of all current targets is confirmed by experiment to be simultaneous. However, the number of targeted individuals in each round increases exponentially. In the late stages, the testing indicates that the subject is unable to perceive any human fault excepting themselves, and in one case, has been shown to start losing sensory input from animal life. The erasure slowly causes slowly developing paranoia and psychosis in the subject. This is confirmed to be a result of the isolation, not a direct effect of 1078. However, Subject D-1078-8 reported vivid auditory and visual hallucinations. It is believed now that during the late stages of 1078's integration, it not only blocks out all stimuli from humans, but also creates false stimuli in the mind of its host. Subjects that are not terminated invariably take their own life, either directly out of despair, or by desperately trying to wrench 1078 out of their eye socket and dying from the resulting cranial hemorrhage. 8 was prevented from suicide, but after a period of 15 years expired due to data expunged. Through a process currently unknown to Foundation researchers, a short period after death, 1078 will vanish from the body and appear elsewhere, in one case turning up blank months later in the town of blank, approximately blank kilometers distant from the previous containment location. Following death of the subject, 1078 retracts its bristles. If retrieved in a timely fashion, it will not disappear. However, 1078 has vanished from its containment on blank separate occasions prior to current containment procedures. Regardless of the stage, all attempts to remove 1078 from the host after optic nerve integration resulted in severe and invariably fatal cranial hemorrhage in the subject. This effect is observed regardless of whether the subject or an outside observer has attempted removal. Lastly, it should be noted that following Experiment 6, researchers discovered that 1078 emits a low amount of electromagnetic radiation when properly incorporated into a human being. It is currently unknown whether or not these emissions constitute a coherent signal, but containment has been updated to prevent possible communication with unknown entities. So that's why there's a Faraday cage. Let's check Experiment 6 to see what that did. I don't think we really need to see any of the rest of them, but if Experiment 6 is in here, here it is. 1 D-Class personnel, male Asian, 35 years of age, eye surgically removed while in Foundation custody. They were placed under general anesthesia and an incision made into the back of the head to allow for direct contact between 1078 and the brainstem of the subject. Results: data expunged, all personnel in the room were killed, and subject self-terminated by attempts to forcibly remove 1078. By the time medical teams reported to the testing chamber, 1078 had vanished and was not recovered for a period of blank months. Note: as desirable as the idea of having eyes on the back of the head might be, it is clear that 1078 reacts undesirably to direct contact with neural tissue. Let's not try that one again. Addendum: review of surveillance equipment showed static for a period of blank frames of video following the expiration of 6. Prior to this, careful analysis of tapes showed slight amounts of interference and fast period variation in the brightness of the overhead lights. The possibility was raised that 1078 emits electromagnetic radiation while integrated in the human neural tissue. Okay, so they tried to have an eye on the back of the dude's head, something bad happened, and they determined that the 1078 does not like to touch brain. Okay, Dr. Wondertainment's bubble bath bonbons. Oh, I accidentally skipped the only child. My bad. It's Euclid again. Each specimen of 1076 is to be held in a 1x5 by 2x2.5 unfurnished cell with a windowless door. It used to say food should be provided 3 times daily, but now there's a footnote. Sorry I keep yawning. I started doing this immediately after I woke up. I guess I didn't get enough sleep as usual. Previous procedure called for providing food to specimens, but it has since been determined that 1076 can consume any amount of food without showing signs of satiation and can survive indefinitely without any food intake whatsoever. Okay. Bedding and plumbing facilities are not required. Soundproofing is not strictly required, but should be provided if possible to reduce psychological stress on guards. 1 armed guard is to be assigned to each cell, chosen from personnel with no children under the age of 21. Following access to specimens. Where did I get the word following from? Access to specimens of 1076 for experimentation requires level 3 clearance and written approval there's the following. A thorough psychiatric profile. In no circumstance will access be granted to researchers with children under the age of 21. Due to their territorial behavior, specimens must be kept separate from each other at all times. To guarantee this, it is recommended that no 2 specimens be held in the same building. Description: instances of 1076 appear to be children between the ages of 3 and 5 with an unwashed appearance and long matted hair, barefoot and dressed in ragged clothing. Cursory physical examination reveals signs of moderate to severe malnutrition and bruising and scarring consistent with physical abuse. Specimens of both sexes have been encountered and normally appear to be of the majority ethnicity of their place of discovery. Specimens seem to comprehend simple statements but have not displayed any signs of verbal ability. Vocalizations are limited to simple grunts, sighs, and, when disturbed, loud shrieking and sobbing. like the witch from Left 4 Dead. Specimens are reluctant to meet the gaze of any individual and tend to look downward in the absence of outside stimulus. They will respond to simple questions by nodding in the affirmative or negative. Okay. Initial encounters with 1076 occur when a parent discovers the child in a state of apparent distress. These incidents occur in isolation. There are no known cases with any third-party witnesses. Scientists report an overwhelming feeling of pity for the specimen, and every recorded case take it into their home. Okay, so what's that footnote? For the purposes of this document, a parent refers to a person with one or more living children below the age of 21. Once established in a home, 1076 begins to monopolize the attention of the parents to the exclusion of their own children. Children in the home begin to show signs of neglect and malnutrition and become depressed, sullen, and withdrawn. Behavioral problems such as truancy and running away become frequent, which may attract the attention of school authorities or social welfare agents. Upon investigating, these authorities become obsessed with the welfare of 1076 and subsequently ignore the children. An infestation typically ends with the deaths of the parents and other caretakers as they neglect their own well-being in order to attend to 1076, eventually succumbing to starvation or disease. In the few cases where the Foundation was able to contain an infestation before this occurrence, subjects separated from the specimen became violent or nearly catatonic and repeatedly demanded to be reunited with their baby. If two specimens of 1076 meet, they will attack each other with great force using teeth and fingernails until one or both are dead. Any person now witnessing such an attack should be treated for possible psychological trauma. Request 1. Dr. Blank has requested access to an SCP-1076 specimen for vivisection. Request denied at this time pending completion of less invasive physiological analysis. Okay. I guess that's why it's called the only child, because once it's in your house, all of your other children no longer exist to you. Nor does your own life. Well, the Dr. Wondertainment thing is safe, and we know how to read Dr. Wondertainment articles. All instances of 1079 are currently stored within Containment Locker 1079 at Site 19. Furthermore, watch list databases are to be updated with the SCP-1079's information in order to intercept any new shipments which may occur in the future. SCP-1079 is a designation given to a number of sweet-lit, brightly labeled Dr. Wondertainment's Bubble Bath bonbons, all rights reserved. Currently, the Foundation has blank crates of SCP-1079 in containment, currently containing 64 packets each. The label on each packet provides the name of the product and 2 warnings: not suitable for children under 3 years, and only 1 sweet is to be taken per sitting. In addition, it lists negative % daily values of several nutrients, vitamins, and minerals, none of which are present in 1079. Human test subjects report tingling sensations immediately after the consumption of 1079. 10 to 15 seconds later, the subject's own blood is secreted as pink bubblegum-scented foam from the subject's pores on their abdomen, arms, and back. The total volume of blood secreted in this way is typically from 30 to 50 milliliters and does not pose an immediate health risk. The volume of blood secreted increases exponentially as more pieces are consumed. Bubbles form in the subject's blood as a consequence of the SCP's intended function, causing the blood to boil. Death by exsanguination occurs in 95% of subjects who have consumed 4 or more candies in one sitting. Exsanguination is compounded by foam collecting in the lungs of the consumer. After standardized animal testing was conducted, it was found that 1079's effect scales with the consumer's body mass. Addendum. Since its initial discovery in blankety-blank 1990, blank deliveries have been made to various supermarkets globally. Attempts to trace these deliveries back to a distribution center or supplier have been unsuccessful as of blank 2005. Well, that sounds significantly less fun than Dr. Wondertainment's usual stuff. I don't recall his usual stuff actually just straight up killing people. Unless that was made after, immediately after Dr. Wondertainment was being held captive by the factory, because that happened. And it doesn't sound like the kind of thing that would have been made by the lady who became the new Dr. Wondertainment either, because she was highly whimsical and would probably not make bubble bath that kills people. Or candy that turns people into bubble bath, which makes them die, rather. Now the creche. So we got 3 Euclids and 2 safes, even though the 1 safe is only safe because it's candy and you're safe if you don't eat it. So in terms of containment, it's safe. In terms of what it does, it should be destroyed. Pretty much everything that's safe because of containment could probably stand to be destroyed. I know it's secure, contain, protect, but that protect would be a lot easier if it was secure, destroy. But then it'd be the SCP Foundation, and they already use the letter D for disposing of people, so 1080 and its accompanying documentation are to be kept at Site-38 in a locked containment room. Under no circumstances are any children below the age of 13 allowed to be near the vicinity of 1080, except for experiment purposes. What is it, a treehouse? Any reports of behavior similar to that of 1081 specimens are to be met with immediate investigation and containment of potential subjects. Description: SCP-1080 is a large black rectangular chamber, 2 meters wide, 3 meters long, and 1.5 meters in depth, resembling a sensory deprivation chamber in size and shape. Despite the resemblance, the tank contains no water and has no windows. The tank has no controls. Its magnetic locking mechanism activates only when a child is placed in the chamber, and no means available to the Foundation have been able to determine what happens when the chamber is locked. Experimentation carried out after Incident 1080 Alpha reveals that children who enter the chamber emerge 3 to 5 days later, aged to approximately 20 years old. Time elapsed depends on the age of the child upon entering the chamber. Regardless, the age of the resulting adult is consistent. 1080 has no effects on humans over the age of 13, and children between 9 and 12 typically emerge with massive physical disabilities and psychoses. Humans exposed to 1080 are designated 1. They will have no discernible personality, will not speak under any circumstances, and will only respond to an identification number tattooed onto the back of the left hand below a barcode. Even then, the human will only respond to the command, "Come here, leave, and fix this." The last command will only work when one is presented with a motor vehicle. One specimens encountering any small motorized vehicles, automobiles, motorcycles, etc., with any system functioning at less than optimal quality will repair the system in minutes, using whatever materials are available. Speed, efficiency, and quality of the repairs will be far beyond the abilities of any other mechanic. Addendum A Recovery Report. The tank was discovered in an unidentified brick building found in a heavily wooded area outside of blank, Tennessee on blank October 2000-something. The building's presence was considered anomalous due to the present testimony of people who frequently hiked through the area, all of whom had insisted had not been there previously. By the time Foundation researchers reached the building, the only object remaining in sight was 1080. X-ray analysis of the object detected a number of unusual mechanical components embedded in the walls of the chamber. Later experimentation proved such analysis is impossible when the chamber is locked. However, it proved impossible to determine the tank's function. No normal documentation was found with the object, and the object had no markings indicating its purpose or capabilities. Object classified SCP-1080. 2 days after the tank was removed from the building disappeared and could no longer be located anywhere in the forest. Other objects similar to 1080 are suspected to exist, possibly capable of producing humans with greater degrees of sapience. Addendum 1080B is provided for explanation. And here is said addendum. A single scrap of paper was recovered from the building containing 1080. The paper, which appeared to be a piece of an invoice of some kind, reads as follows. Solon Crash Enterprises, 2015 3rd Circle, Novo Actium of Forest. Remit order to Alexilva University, Physical Plant Operations, Motorized Transportation Department of CX1 2nd Circle, Alexandria Forests. Item number 21, quantity 10. Class 3 manual employee, specialization automotive, price. Comments. Your company referred to us by outside source. We may consider purchasing faculty if Class 3 workers are satisfactory. Vice Chancellor Allgrass. The rest of the invoice was missing. So there's that university again, which we haven't heard much about them because I've not checked them out directly. It leads to Wayward, which is what? The Parable of the Wayward Prince, which I do have bookmarked to come back to at some point. In any case, that about does it for this episode of Let's Read the SCP Foundation Wiki. In the next episode, we're going to be checking out University Speakers, the whole truth and nothing but the truth, which means there's probably going to be no truth whatsoever. University Skull, Damaged Mausoleum, and Pound Off the Pounds. There's 2 whole entries about universities in the next episode coming up. That being said, this has been Anachi Sasuke. If you liked it, I'd like it to subscribe would be groovy. If you didn't, you need to do either one of those things. If you'd like to click the bell, you can do that as well. And I will see y'all in the next one. Later.